Jetzt.
All right.
Very good.
Hey. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning or good evening, depending on from where you're tuning in. And a very warm welcome to the first current conversation. And actually, it's really, really nice to have David as the first guest for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, welcome. And I'm going to give a very short intro into what you can expect. And then it would be fantastic for a quick introduction. With this new format, what we're planning to do is, personally, I'm a podcast lover. I think it's one of the best ways to learn new things, to get new perspectives. And the one thing that I always feel is it would be fantastic if I could ask questions during the recording, if I want to go deeper into a certain topic. And this is exactly what we're trying to provide with this format. This is going to be a 30-minute conversation. And feel free to just drop your questions in the comments, and we will try our best to pick them up. If there are no questions, I don't think that we will ever run out of topics to talk about. And with that, let's get started. And yeah, welcome, David. Maybe you can do a very quick introduction of yourself too.
Sure, happy to do so. So first of all, thank you, Joy, for having me. And I think it's always cool to try out new formats. So curious to see how that goes. I'm also a podcast addict. We just had the conversation about one of our, at least my favorites, is the Huberman Lab. And as you said, he's like speaking endless hours about like interesting stuff. And there's so many times when I wish I could just like prompt him and say, wait, what do you think about X, Y, Z? And so let's see where it goes. So I'm David. I founded a company that's called Everdrop. So we are working in the household cleaning and personal care industry. So it's an industry that you might know from the drugstores, mostly known for like a huge shelf wall full of plastic bottles. And we thought, okay, so this is like connecting the two, our two companies in that sense. We thought, okay, we have such a huge plastic problem in this world. So isn't there any alternative? Isn't there any way to make this better and less harmful? And then we started Everdrop. We started with household cleaning products. Concept is super simple. Most of these plastic bottles, no matter if it's your body wash, hand wash, household cleaning product, contains it's a liquid, but it contains mostly out of water. The majority of those products is just water, and we all have water back home. So the question is just, so why would we transport this water in trucks throughout the countries into the drugstores to our home, so that we buy plastic bottles, single-use plastic bottles? And what we do is like we have little tablets and powders, and the idea is you just buy the bottle once, and then you just like use the tablet or the powder and refill it on your tap water. That's it. We started 3 years ago, so it's still very early stage. We still call it a baby. So happy to be here.
Yeah, and I think there's 3 things that we probably already figured out that we have in common. Now it's actually 4, because we also started 3 years ago. But all my bathroom products are from Everdrop, so I think we have that in common.
Amazing.
We are dedicated. Yeah, we're actually trying to get the housekeeping from this office building on your products as well. So let's see. Then
thank you.
Yeah, we're trying to both, I think, dedicate our career to do a little bit better and to reduce plastic pollution. And thirdly, as you said, we both like podcasts, and actually both like the Huberman podcast. And I think this is a perfect intro also to the conversation, because when we first talked, you mentioned that you have a very specific topic that you, besides Everdrop, besides what you do in your professional life, care about very much. And it would be fantastic to get a bit of an insight what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're speaking about mindset, and I think this caught my attention in one of his episodes with he was speaking to a scientist called Alia Crum. So she's also a Stanford professor, was a guest in this podcast, and she introduced concepts that showed the relation between the mindset and your body. Like really not like, I mean, we all, I assume we all know that depending on your mindset, you perceive the world more positively or more negatively, or you see things in different angles. So I think everybody is aware of the potential psychological effect, although there's like still so much that we could potentially learn of. And Alia did like really interesting studies by showing that just the mindset that you have affects how your body responds to it. For example, she did like a study with hotel housekeeping stuff in a hotel, and she said like, okay, they asked them about their physical exercise and sports activity and how much sport they do, and they, of course, most of them said literally like nothing, and they said, yeah, well, if I go home, you picture yourself, housekeeping is like a really tough job. Like you're doing beds, you're cleaning up the rooms. Mostly you have like only a few minutes to clean one room. And so they said, okay, when I get home, I don't want to go in a gym at all. It's just like, it's like I'm exhausted and just happy to be at home. And then they divided the group into groups, the participants in two groups, and the one, just stayed as everything as a control group, as everything was used to be. And the second got like a minor, like a really 15-minute mindset intervention. And they told them, well, did you actually know that by the general surgeon recommendations, 15 to 30 minutes of physical exercise a day brings you all the benefits that you think you should get from physical exercise, like, losing weight, the health benefits, etc., etc. So, and then they made them clear. And just by doing your job, you're outperforming the 50 minutes or 30 minutes by far. And that's pretty much all they told them. So they should actually get the physical and the health benefits from this physical exercise. So, and then they came back after 6 or 8 weeks, and the results were crazy. Like the control group, nothing changed, but with the one that got the mindset intervention, they lost weight, had about a better body mass index. They they even measured systolic blood pressure, which is like an early indicator for cardiovascular health, and even that improved. So your risk for heart disease decreased by that, and above that, I mean, if that wasn't just enough, they like their job more suddenly. So and it's just like, if you think about it, it was just like a 15 minutes intervention. And I think in the working environment, there's like the concept of the growth and fixed mindset, such an important topic. Because like, how do you perceive challenges? How do you react on feedback and stuff like that? So there's Carol Dweck as a brainchild for that. And yeah, and I think it relates a lot to what we do in our industry, where we think about sustainability. Because obviously, if you, for example, take the two concepts of the fixed and the growth mindset, the idea behind this concept is like, if you have like a growth mindset, this is where people are more focused on the effort instead of the outcome. So just like to give a very rough indication, but people who are in a growth mindset tend to be more successful, resilient, persistent, and all these things that you actually need to become more successful to deliver better results. And if you think about sustainability, it's the same. It's like, it will be very hard to achieve the result status, we are all now perfectly sustainable. It doesn't work like that, right? So it's a path that we have to walk, and so how do you keep yourself motivated? How do you keep on going? And how do you perceive challenges and failures and feedbacks and criticism and all this stuff? And I think to focus on the effort and praise yourself for every little step that you do in your everyday life, this is definitely something that there's a big parallel to what we do, and how we could potentially help us to stay on track and push things forward. So, but you were listening to it yesterday, right? Did you just?
Yeah, exactly. I listened to the summary episode yesterday after we talked, and what I found crazy was this study that they did on how to give feedback and what it does to people. Like in the one group, they told people, it's like, oh my God, you're so smart, or you're such a good athlete. Like they really focused on the
label,
on the label basically. And then they had another group where they focused on things like, for example, in athleticism, right? It's like when you lost that ball and you ran back, that really impressed me. It's like when you focus on the action that people take and on the verbs and give feedback that way, it showed that the performance of those people, where they focused on the verbs and on the actual actions, increased by so much. And I find this really, really interesting, especially when it comes to the fixed term sustainability, because I don't think that it is a fixed term. And there's so much to learn from it also.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, the study has been really, that you were just referring to is like really crazy, because if you keep in mind, like they did like 2 tests, and the first test was a math test, I think, as far as I know. They all had more or less like the same answers right and wrong and stuff like that. And then they divided the group, and they only got, intelligence praise. I think that's how they called it. So they were praised for, as you said, for, okay, you are really XYZ, smart, intelligent, and so on. And the others have been praised for the effort they put in. And after this praise, in the second test, their performance improved. So I think there's so much to learn for each individual of us. And yeah, and as you said, like, and if you want to use this knowledge and these insights and these results for something that could potentially make the world a little bit less harmful, a little bit better, then this is definitely the way how we should think of sustainability. Because I mean, of course, we have to react fast. We have to really, really put our stuff together and see how we could move things. But at the end, it's a process, and we definitely shouldn't get overwhelmed by the almost impossible result of being totally sustainable, but instead of focus on the effort and the way to go there. And yeah, so this is like a very good question. Like, I mean, you work with CleanHub like in the epicenter for where like a lot of the plastic waste is ending up, and in the nature and in the oceans and everywhere. So if you see all that, I mean, how do you like keep yourself motivated and don't get totally frustrated? Because it seems like if you look at the amount of plastic that is ending up in nature and the amount that you potentially could pull out of it, it seems like a fight that's very hard to win. I mean, how do you keep yourself going? And
I think this is probably subconsciously we did apply the growth mindset now, the more that I think about it, because when I started that work very early on, and I quote that quite a lot. I read an interview with Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia and Fast Company, where he says, like, look, we can't delude ourselves into the idea that anything is sustainable, because everything man does creates more harm than good. However, you can then, if you apply that standpoint, you can get better, right? You can produce less and less and less harm, and always get better with every single step you take. And I think if I would go out and tell myself, it's like, we are a sustainable company and we do everything perfect, I put my team and the entire mission basically into that fixed mindset. And this is not where we start from, but we say, okay, what can we do today to get a little bit better? And then celebrate also these small successes, right? In total, we collected now a bit more than 5.5 million kilograms, so 5,500 tons, which in comparison to the big chunk of plastic that goes into the ocean is almost nothing, right? If you're honest about it. But at the same time, 2 years ago, nobody would have believed that we can even collect that much. And taking
is a huge amount. Like, can you repeat that again? How much?
It's 5,500 metric tons, 5.5 million kilograms.
Crazy, yeah. Congrats.
So
that's a big win. Yeah, amazing.
Thank
you.
So
what is the biggest challenge? I mean, what is the biggest challenge for you guys, like in your everyday work? Like, what is holding you back from? What is like the biggest struggle, pain point that you see every day?
Yeah, I think there's 2 points really, and I think they are a bit connected. On the one hand, I was presenting at a conference yesterday. And afterwards, somebody came up and said, I really like the presentation, but why are you shipping waste from Europe to Asia? And it's like, but we don't do that. It's like, how do you think that we do that? And being precise in the communication and getting people out of the mindset that they grew up with here, right? It's like, we have the recycling bins in the backyard. This is not reality for 2 billion people out there. And having people step out of what they believe the world looks like and stepping into the shoes of what it looks like for others, this is the first difficult piece. And I think as more and more people understand what the true issues behind plastic pollution are, the solutions become much more clear. And why these two things are connected, I think, is because the other thing is we need to have way more companies like you, like everdrop, basically, that also step up and say, okay, we're going to support the work CleanHub is doing. And if you're honest, you are not even shipping your products to Asia. None of the plastic that we collect there ever belong to everdrop. You already reduced your plastic emissions so much, but there's other brands out there, right, that consciously ship their plastic into areas where there's no waste management. And I think we need more role models like you in the end that show to the big ones also that things are possible. And I think to some degree, you're doing something similar there, right? Because I think a lot of the big consumer good product companies will say it's not possible to reduce plastic any further. And at the same time, you are building a completely new category where you reduced it so much with a completely new business model. So yeah,
fair point. I mean,
I think
that's definitely this is the main challenges. Yeah, I think it's definitely maybe a good example for rethinking, and maybe this is something that I always like to tell people. So what can you learn from the everdrop story is, I think, okay, we had this concept which was quite unknown. So people, I think everything that was related to I can mix my own products at home was still like more the DIY sphere, but not like done as convenient as we are doing that. And when we told that, the challenge was, okay, obviously the retail is totally dominated by all the big incumbents. So it's really hard to get in there, especially as a tiny, very small startup. You don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the money, you don't have like the brand awareness. It's really tough. So our window of opportunity by then was social media, because like literally no one of the big household cleaning brands was on social media. Why that? Because the perception was no one would buy household cleaning products online. I mean, and we said, okay, well, let's give it a try. It's a good idea. It's like we make it Instagrammable and try to follow all the recipes that you need to work on social media. And then it turned out to work. And I think there's still so many other categories in industries that, as you said, like are still dominated by a huge plastic consumption, where there are already so smart concepts out there, and where you could rethink. But I mean, at the end, the reality, it's not only plastic, it's CO2 emission, it's like biodegradability, and there's so many issues we need to tackle. And I think that means on the other side, there's so much potential for good ideas and companies to come up. And yeah, so Joel, if your companies
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing, because I actually checked before our conversation. I think just on Instagram, you already have 3 times as many followers as Henkel, where I would say it's like you're basically all the products that you provide, I could also get from them. Well, it's quite crazy to see that after 3 years in business, you're already that much further ahead. And I think there's a third challenge that comes with that, because what happens on social media is storytelling and is branding, right? And I think a big challenge, and this is probably not exclusive to CleanHub or to everdrop, but to a lot of companies out there, is that given the urgency of the issues that are being tackled, I think a lot of society does fall into a fixed mindset where they say, I need a solution that is perfect. I think this narrative needs to shift a little bit into, 100%. Okay, how can we act faster and take single steps, but very quickly towards a better future, right? And
100%.
Positioning-wise, this is a big challenge as a business.
Yeah, 100%. And to be honest, like, and it's not always easy. I mean, look at the automotive industry. I don't want to go into this rabbit hole, but like, we need to get rid of the current fuel system, and the system or the technology that has I think mostly driven by Tesla. The fastest breakthrough was like obviously electric cars with batteries. But still not perfect. I mean, there's hydrogen out there, and probably some other alternatives as well. So, and it's always, and I think it will take a very long time until we find something that is really perfect. But nevertheless, I think what's important is to do the steps, in another direction, because with that comes innovation. If you would just stick with our current engine systems and would say, okay, we wait and we use that until the perfect solution is there, oh, good luck with that. I mean, that does work. So we need to move, and we need to processes, even if that means it's not perfect yet. But I think if we all shift, and if we all do, and if we start a movement in one direction, there will come innovation, ideas, and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is I think exactly, or this is a perfect example, right? Because as soon as you would go out and say e-mobility is sustainable, I think it's very easy to prove that statement wrong. But if you would say this is better than something that we did yesterday, there's very little to argue with. And I think this is so important when it comes to communicating in the field of sustainability, even though I don't particularly like that word, if I'm honest. It's focusing on the actions, focusing again on the verb. So it's like, what is it that we're really doing, and how is that making us better than what happened yesterday? Instead of talking in definitives and say, this is now the best solution, this is the sustainable solution, but more, how did we improve compared to the industry yesterday, compared to ourselves yesterday? And this is very liberating in communications, I think, and where a lot of people should follow suit, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is like the topic that you picked with today's episode. It's like communicating into sustainability, and this is like a very, very complicated field, because obviously, as soon as you start something and try to be more sustainable or reduce the impact of what's in your industry, of course, you need to make statements that tell the people, okay, this is like a business, this is an idea that's trying to solve XYZ, and by that trying to be more sustainable. And on the other side, there's like a whole the minefield where you say, okay, when is certain communication greenwashing? And it's like there's so much and there's so much that you can do potentially wrong. And I think in terms of your topic for today, I could at least try to frame the one or the other approach that how we are handling that with everdrop. And I think one of the most important thing is like a transparency. So try to communicate everything that you do. Like, on one hand, don't do green hushing, and just because you're afraid of greenwashing, don't communicate any green statement anymore, because I would say, in general, on a macro perspective, this would harm us and the society more than if you try to communicate something what you haven't proven perfectly yet. And on the second hand, also just state where you're good and where you're not that good, and where you're insecure and stuff like that. And I don't know, but we have like a whole section on our website where we try to put everything that we have together in terms of our CO2 emissions. What did we measure? What couldn't we measure so far? About our wins and fails. Where do we think are we already really good at? And also very sustainable, or more sustainable, less harmful. And where did we do totally fails? I mean, and where did we fuck up? And I think at the end, as you said, it's a little bit related with the idea of the growth mindset. We need to focus on the effort. We shouldn't be afraid of failures, because we all fail. And I think there is like a very, and I could totally understand that it's really tough to get canceled when you kind of like get public and media critics for whatsoever in your communication that hasn't been perfect. But at the end, I think we all need to actually praise the effort, and there's, because this will help us, and this will help sustainable startups to get in the right direction. This will help us as a society to go in the right direction. And just to get questions in there. Did you read this already?
Is there a question?
Yeah, it's pretty much where currently we're tackling on. Okay. How do you handle negative feedback and criticism? Okay, well, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, how you handle it is try to be very open and transparent. As transparent, of course, as you can go, without risking your business ideas and business concepts. But in general, I think it's always, I mean, criticism is something, it's a little bit, it's like, how do you perceive the word? Is it criticism or is it feedback? And I think I really like that there are both words in there, negative feedback and criticism, because I think mostly it's negative feedback. I like feedback in general. So, I mean, obviously, it's impossible as a company to see everything yourself. You every time, and it's possible to do everything perfectly. So it's like, okay, we can accept that. So there will be always space to get critics, or like, there's always space to improve. And so I think it's a little bit like in the feedback culture, like that you hopefully have for yourself, personal life, your working life, and stuff like that. Try to be open. Try to see what's the good in it. What can you learn out of that? How do you respond to it? I mean, is it something that you can tackle? And by that, even, I mean, this would be, just imagine that there would someone give you a negative feedback and say, hey, you're doing X, Y, Z bad, and you haven't been aware of that. Then you tackle it, and then you publicly thank this person for observing it and that you fixed it. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, I would trust a company like that. Yeah. And yeah, so I think being transparent, getting into direct communication with them. And I mean, we've been criticized as everdrop as well, because we weren't able to prove, because we haven't done an LCA, a life cycle analysis assessment for the comparison, our cleaning tubs versus the liquid cleaner in terms of CO2 emissions. And if you do a whole LCA, it takes ages. And we've got
it's also very, very expensive. It's like if you want to do it properly.
Yeah, and we get like we get very criticized with that. There was like a big media piece, and they said, if they're really more sustainable, we don't know. To prove that, you would need an LCA, but they don't have one. So at the end, you just don't know if it's better. And we were like, what? Like literally, like this tiny tab compares transport and so on. So we were kind of like totally. But again, I mean, we did what I think was the best way to react on that. I mean, of course, we reacted very openly, tried to comment on all the edit things. But more importantly, we took this as a driver to prove it. And by now we have our LCA together, and we can prove that already the first usage of a tap versus a liquid cleaner is more sustainable in terms of CO2 emissions and so on. And the interesting concept of our products is like the more often you refill it, the better the impact gets. So it's like exponential and the increasing the impact. But yeah,
I think this is something super interesting, because what I feel, as soon as you go into an industry like ours, or where you say, okay, we want to do something better than it was done before, you are put, or people perceive you as taking the moral high ground of saying, it's like, I'm better than you because I'm caring more about the environment, even though you don't verbally say that, but that's part of the perception. And I don't know what it is, but somehow this triggers people to pull you off from that moral high ground and show that you are as bad as others. And this is something that I find, or that was very difficult for me in the first 3 years, because I don't think that I have the moral high ground on anything. It's like I just chose to dedicate my career to a problem that I personally care about, but that doesn't mean that I'm a better or worse human than anyone else out there, right? And I noticed when I was on your website, and I was wondering if there was part of feedback or part of a learning cycle. I feel like you're using very conscious language. For example, usually you read klimafreundlicher Versand, so climate-friendly shipping, and you say klimaschonend. So basically already implying the concept of doing less harm, right? How conscious is that? Was that result of feedback, or?
Yeah, I mean, of course we try that, because like klimafreundlich is one of the very first things that we try to erase, because how could you be klimafreundlich, climate friendly? And yeah, and the thing is, like, as you said, like with the quote of the Patagonia founder you just made, it's like, how, I mean, from now on, at least at the moment, it's really hard to produce any good that is, good for the environment, with the whole energy and production efforts and everything, and the sales process that you do. So what we are currently facing as a society is like, how can we be less harmful and reducing the negative implications? And this is what we're aiming for. And so we also got like very early. We are pulling, with the help of you guys, for example, also a lot of plastic out of the environment, more than we even produce for our refill containers. So we could potentially say, okay, we are plastic neutral, or we are, if you compensate, what about climate neutral, stuff like that. Exactly, but this is like all, this is again fixed mindset. It's about a label. It's like what big corporations would do, and so by 2024, 50 or 2040, we are climate neutral, and so on, and they are aiming for a label. And no, I think it's more about the process. I mean, what could you potentially do in your everyday life and as a company and as a human being to improve one after the other thing? There's also a book from James Clear that's called Atomic Habits, and I think in Germany it's called the 1% rule. Like, if you improve like every day a little bit, the ultimate impact about the long run is huge. So I think that's something what we need to do. And yeah, you're totally right. I mean, the problem is, like, as soon as you start doing something that people expect you, okay, now you're doing something good. Okay, now you need to do everything good. And now if you don't do that, I don't believe that you're trustworthy enough to do like this single piece good enough and stuff like that. And I think that's a very, very, very dangerous and difficult situation that we are in. And we definitely should try to see that it's a marathon. And if not every individual is trying to improve the one or the other thing, or like, I don't know, like Lisa Neubauer just recently stated that on a conference. Like, for example, this is what you and I did, and I think maybe we inspired the one or the other with that. Like, try to allocate the biggest portion of your awakened time to something that's more part of the solution instead of the problem. So of course it's still nothing perfect, but like, then, okay, this is like one of the biggest chunks you have, and I think it's still not perfect, and we're still doing things that are not there yet, but I think step by step on every part of your life, one improvement, and if the industry is following, then we get there.
I think we'll be very quick to wrap up, but I'm not sure if you have the time, because I know you have to run. There's one question in terms of team. Are you having a person dedicated to impact topics? Yeah. All right. Perfect.
Yeah. So we're having a sustainability team. So currently we are all like we're currently restructuring field, but like, we are now in a position that we have people who are dedicated in the different departments and looking into sustainability, in communication, in product, and so on. But to be very honest, like, if the question is addressing whether you need to have that, this really depends on the question how big your company is. Because at the very beginning, we didn't have that, and it always depends, like, how's your financial situation. Then is the company already in a setup that each individual person, each employer could already carry a part of the sustainability and impact topics, or do you need someone, separately, because it's just not in your DNA? I mean, with our business, I mean, literally, like, most of the people are somehow involved in that, obviously. So, and it's not a general formula, but we do.
Yeah, and I would second that. I think it depends a lot on business in the end. CleanHub works very much on an environmental topic, but what has way more focus internally are actually social topics, because working conditions in waste management historically are not great. So we need a lot of focus there, and we focus a lot of resources there, and work with external experts also. So I think it needs to fit A, the company size, and B, also what challenges from all environmental, social, and governance topics you have, right? How you build that team. I think to wrap it up, it's very simple this time. Let's focus on the efforts. Stop thinking in definitives. Everybody scan their websites. I'm constantly doing that. I try to ban the word sustainable and sustainability from our website. Sometimes it reappears. again, also in communications, if we focus on the efforts, if we focus on the verbs, on the actual things that we do, you're not just only on the way more safe side, but it's also way more intriguing, I believe, and easier to follow in the end. I'm not sure if you have any other thoughts.
No, I think that's very good, and be open, transparent, and put your fails publicly. I think that makes you authentic. It helps the other to see that you don't try to pretend to be perfect, because at the end, no one is perfect. No one is doing no fails, no mistakes, and it's a long way that we all have to go together.
No, absolutely. And a PSA, public service announcement at the end. This episode will live on more or less as piece of content. If you have any questions, feel free to continue commenting. And I think our teams will make sure that we can answer the questions in written form or in any other way.
Cool.
All right. Thank you so much, David, for taking the time.
Sure.
And
thank you so much.
Thanks for the insights. Bye.
See you.